Now, what is negotiation? It is any situation, and I'm going to take a very broad definition of it, any situation that you're in where to achieve your interests or objectives, you have to gain the acquiescence of another person, or the support or agreement of another person. That's a negotiating situation. And given that definition, I have a 6-month-old grandchild, and he's already negotiating. We negotiate all the time. He has his objectives, I have mine. He can't talk yet, but he can negotiate and often gets his way, and he's only 6 months old. So by my definition, anytime you're in a situation where to achieve your interests or goals, you have to involve another person and get their agreement, you are in a negotiating situation. By that, we mean you're negotiating all the time. We negotiate with our family, with our friends, with our children, our boss, our subordinate, our customers, our suppliers, on and on. We negotiate with strangers all the time. We in the field of negotiation like to divide all negotiations into categories. And one of the categories is integrative, and the other is called distributive. Distributive negotiations we also call win-lose negotiations or competitive negotiations. It's also called claiming value. Distributive negotiations are those negotiations where we want to do very well for ourselves, but we really don't care about the other guy. We're probably not going to see him again, and even if we do, we don't care. We want to do very well for ourselves. We don't care if he doesn't work. We probably don't have a relationship with this person. That's called distributive, win-lose, competitive negotiation. The other kind of negotiation we do is integrative, and also called win-win negotiation. This is negotiation with people with whom we have a long-term relationship. Meaning, we would like to do as well as we can for ourselves, but we want the other person to feel pretty good too, because we have to deal with this person tomorrow. It could be our spouse, our kids, our boss, our subordinates, customer, supplier. All right? We have a long-term relationship. Of course we want to do as well as we can, but we want the other person to feel pretty good too. So that's called integrative negotiation, win-win. Practically all of our negotiations, I think we would say, should be of an integrative nature. Practically all of our negotiations are with people with whom we have a long-term relationship. Not all. You know, we go to a store and buy something, maybe negotiate at Best Buy, maybe buying a car. There are situations where we do not, but most of our negotiations probably should be of an integrative nature. That doesn't mean they are, and you're right. That it could be. Many of us have a preferred style of distributive, even though maybe the situation calls for integrative. All right? And when I deal with my undergraduate students here at Northeastern, they only have one style, and that's called distributive, win-lose, at any cost, I think. That's what the class is all about. So we have these two styles, distributive and integrative. They often, there's tension between the two. And of course, in the real world, negotiations often have elements of both. For example, negotiating a salary increase with your boss, is that distributive or integrative?
Should be integrative to win.
What do you think? Integrative?
Yeah. Distributive.
Now, in the real world, especially this real world, there's a finite pool. The bigger raise you get, the less you get. I mean, that's a fixed pot. That sounds zero-sum. That sounds distributive, right? The more you get, the less I get. That sounds win-lose, right? The boss doesn't have infinite amount of raises to give out. The more you get, the less he's got or she's got to give out to other people. That's a problem. But you will certainly want to come out of that negotiation with your boss with both of you feeling good. So even though it's easy for me as an academic to divide negotiations into two, the truth, a lot of our negotiations do have elements of both. All right? You're negotiating a performance review that, you know, one element you weren't thrilled with how your boss evaluated. Again, it has some elements of distributive, some elements of integrative, and there's tension. The basic tension is this, and you highlighted it before. A distributive negotiator has there's certain advantages of being a win-lose competitive negotiator, and there's certain risks. Most important, and integrative are the same too. The biggest benefit of being an integrative negotiator is if you're open, integrative negotiators tend to be open, right? They tend to disclose their interests. They don't bluff, they don't lie. Right? If, just like you're going out to a restaurant with your friends on the weekend, you wouldn't bluff about what kind of food you like. You would be very honest and open. Why would you bluff? Integrative negotiators tend to disclose information, maybe not always all the time. They may be careful about what information they give out and when, but they tend to be open. Again, they tend not to bluff, tend not to lie. Distributive negotiators tend to be closed. You can even tell by their body language sometimes. They're very careful about what information they give out and when. Maybe they withhold information mostly. They bluff, sometimes lie. Well, maybe I shouldn't use that word. Let's say are selective in the kind of information they give out. All right? There are benefits of both types. Integrative negotiation, win-win. Because people are open and disclose their interest, integrative negotiation provides the best opportunity for joint problem solving because you're sharing information. The best opportunity to come out and get that information on the table and come out with a solution that works for both. But what's the biggest risk of being an integrative negotiator? There's a big risk. The biggest risk of being an integrative negotiator, it leaves you open to being taken advantage of, right? And that's a big risk. Now, distributive, just take the reverse. The biggest advantage of being a distributive negotiator is you're probably not going to be taken advantage of. You're protected because you're defensive. Well, what's the biggest risk of being a distributive negotiator? The biggest risk is it's very hard to come up with creative problem-solving solutions as a win-lose negotiator because you're withholding information, you're not disclosing your true interests, you may be bluffing, you may be lying. It makes it very hard to come out with really win-win kinds of solutions. So each one has risks, each one has a positive to it. You might say it's the same as in any human relationship. If you're an open human being, probably provides you the best opportunity for healthy human relationships, but it leaves you most vulnerable to being hurt. And the reverse. If you're a closed human being and put a boundary around yourself, you probably won't get hurt because you're protected, but it makes it very difficult to have healthy human relationships. I don't mean to get really serious about all this, but negotiations like any human relationship.